as we were saying, it's really the next line on this document that, by the way, happens to be the last line here, as you can see, where they really tried to hang their hat. Here's what it says. It says, quote, as you can see here, puts hands on his privates. That's really, really interesting because it's the quote his privates part that they were hoping to sell. Let's call it the groin. Listen, in Taekwondo class, whether you're 6 or whether you're 76, that's what we call it. We don't call it the privates, and we don't ignore it, and we don't avoid the topic. In fact, it is specifically taught as a precise target. And the students of all ages, since the very beginning of time, they learn multiple attacks and blocks on and of, that target. Listen, a karate class is not a courtroom where everyone pretends. It's not a church. It's not a courtroom where everybody pretends to tread delicately, kind of tiptoeing around the language so we can pretend to be shocked or incredulous at groin talk. No, not at all. Taekwondo class and Taekwondo language and practice cannot afford to be anything but direct and bold language. So let's say groin, because that's the actual Taekwondo language. Since the indictment fraudulently alleges absolutely nothing, it's blank, as you can see, the arrest affidavit too, nobody had any clue what exactly I was being accused of until I had secured this document right here that, by the way, again, I remind you, they tried to hide from me. Lori Basham was able to get her hands on it, though, the actual interview notes. Otherwise, there's absolutely no hints, and it's just from this line, the notes of the actual questioning of Miss Orange that I could actually glean where they might have tried to go. And listen, this is so silly that it would not have held up in any court at all. So, first off, let's answer, as you can see here, it says everybody exercise. And let's answer the question, well, who is everybody? Well, when she says, as you see, everybody, well, who is that? All right, well, let's list that, shall we? First of all, there's me, obviously, and her, since it was the beginning of a new training cycle. There were also about 20 beginner juniors in that class, plus 2 of my colored belt coaches who were already there even before that class started. Those 2 people are named Elijah Scott and his mother, Cheryl Scott, one of the color belt coaches, black belt, in fact. Then one of my brand new red collars showed up. Her name is Jamie McGrath. She had just gotten her red collar instructor stripe. Then still, during that same class, even more of my staff instructors and coaches showed up. Black collar and complete traitor, by the way, to everybody, Joni Parks, plus more coaches, which included her son, Buddy, and Trey Chadwick, and Reed Kitchens. They all came in the same van. And by the way, Miss Yellow used to call herself Miss Kitchens, saying she was going to marry one of my black belts, Reed Kitchens. For his sake, I kind of hope that did not happen. Plus, on top of all of those people, the viewing room was full, loaded with parents on just the other side of the glass, monitoring every single second, every tiny thing which goes on in every single class. That's actually how I designed it. That's why the school was set up exactly as it was, so that every parent, every student, every coach, every instructor could see and know everything. Plus, the entire wall of the dojo, or as she calls it in this report, is the total room, as Orange Girl calls it. The whole wall is just one giant mirror all the way across, so that anything that happened was always seen by every single person, including, by the way, those in the glassed-in viewing room.
This call is from a federal prison.
Thank you so much. Nothing which occurred in the, as Orange Girl called it, the total room, nothing which occurred on the actual dojo floor, nothing could go unnoticed. There's just no way. And that, by the way, is part of the reason that the case began falling apart. Because, listen, it's a karate class. It's an ancient curriculum, which is not the least bit shy about the groin. It's taught as a specific target, and that's unavoidable. Even in the purple belt young, or kata, for those of you who nihongo wakarimasu, a form, a pattern, which is hundreds of years old, there are 2 spear hands to the groin. This is for purple belts, by the way, of all ages. It doesn't matter if you're a child or not. Every single requirement is exactly the same for everyone for 200 generations. There's no way to avoid the privates or the groin in martial arts. But even that is not what she's describing here. What Orange Girl was being told, as you can see here, being told by her mother to say was, a stance, the Barreau stance, the at-ease stance. Her claim, literally, explicitly so, as you can read here with your own eyeballs, is not that I, quote-unquote, fondled anyone. She doesn't even allege that, even though that's what the word fondling sounds like, though, isn't it? What she's trying to say to Marie Steele here isn't that I touched her, quote, privates. Nope. What she's describing is actually the exact opposite. She's claiming that when I adjusted her hands in that stance that, quote, everybody, those are her words, was doing behind her back, she's saying that she touched my groin. So get this straight. She, the so-called victim, never claimed that she was groped or touched or fondled, as the statutory language was written in the 1980s. She never even claimed that. But that's not what the news kind of implies, has implied for the last 12 years. That's not at all what was said in the actual interview itself. But that's not what the reporters are trying to make you think. That's not what Stephen Thomason was trying to make you think. The actual statement, which, by the way, this explains why it's not even legally alleged, since it's not in the indictment. The indictment is blank. The actual statement is that she touched me there. No one ever groped that girl. Not Miss Orange, not Miss Yellow. And by the way, this is from the actual police notes. I didn't write these notes. I wasn't even present. These are notes from Jim's Little Johnson that he actually had, by the way, before his news conference, where he claimed, that I was the devil or whatever, before the arrest. But did he tell you this? Did he tell you this stuff? Absolutely not. He did not. Meaning, once again, that he lied to you. He lied to you publicly. Now tell me how you feel about that. Are you okay with that? By the way, that stance, it is and has been a part of every Taekwondo curriculum in the world and for generations. Making an adjustment to that, proper hand position, angle, tension, weight distribution, whatever. That
This call is from a federal prison.
Which is done millions of times a year, not just with beginning students, by the way, but with every single practitioner, and probably throughout the entirety of their training. There's absolutely no way in hell, not even in Lee County, would that case have ever survived the first day in court. But it didn't need to, because all they needed was the accusation. That's it. And by the way, I'd like to remind you, I'm a former national grand champion. And though things were certainly different back in 1994, I've also trained several national champions. You don't get to the elite level like this by running some shady outfit. I've literally taught since the last century. I started training myself in 1977. Again, you don't do this for decades, especially at this level, unless you know what you're doing. There's no place, there's no room for shenanigans. But as you can see, by the way, Jim Johnson had shut down C.L. Hoyle's business. No person in Tupelo is allowed to buck Jim Johnson. He will shut it down. The C.L. Hoyle and Ricky Thompson legal case against him is proof of that as well. That's just his modus operandi, his operational bias. By the way, neither of the so-called victims, the accusers, neither Miss Orange or Miss Yellow, neither one of them ever even claimed that some man, any person, me, ever, quote, fondled them or touched them. The reason it's not in the indictment, as the earlier videos talked about, the blank indictment, the reason it's not in the indictment is because it never happened. It's not in the arrest affidavit either, because it never happened. And it's not even in the actual contemporaneous interview notes. You know why? because it never happened. So why is it that the foreskin, Jim Johnson, and the press, which regurgitated all that, why did he lie to you? Why was he hiding the truths? Well, for that answer, you can go back on this YouTube channel and check out the video entitled Tools. But it's the actual lack of an accusation is actually part of the reason that the case fell apart. And here's another one, by the way. Here's a biggie. He couldn't find a single soul who would co-sign his lie. Not one. Now, I want you to remember, he told the press that there were as many as 8 victims. And he said all of that as if there had been some sort of long investigation. And there hadn't been. It wasn't even 24 hours after the initial interview of this that you see on your screen now, of Orange Girl, that he was giving a press conference announcing the takedown of a sting. That was me. But he implied in that press conference that a whole bunch of students had just joined in. So he was then kind of publicly committed to go dredge up some more accusers from somewhere. After all, he had said it on TV. And we all know how reporters, especially WTVA, they love to hold people like Holland and Johnson to account, right? No way, no chance. Anyway, he was now committed. So commence Operation Create Some Dutschke Accusers. And so he tried. Now, it's important to note here that these joint task forces against crimes against children, they're often grant-based programs. What that means is they get specialized, earmarked funding just to operate. So they're under constant internal and social pressure to justify their existence. And I can tell you from personal experience that once some government office kind of opens that financial tap, you really don't want it to shut off. So you must then produce results. The difference is that in the intelligence field, it's merit-based earning. It uses a different metric than the quote-unquote law enforcement agencies. Law enforcement agencies, what they do is they prove their continued need based entirely on how many lives they destroy. It's a numbers game because they're simpletons. The gauge for them is very simple. It's based on convictions. Not how many investigations did you do or how thoroughly did you solve a case to get to the truth. No. It's actually instead based on, well, how many people has that task force sent to prison? That's it. That's how they justify their grants. So in the eyes of those joint task forces, there's really no such thing as a false accusation. It's really just kind of an opportunity for them, everyone. Every single new case results in imprisoning some man, it's always some man, by the way, and wrecking all the lives around that suddenly accused man, which, again, all it takes is the accusation. Because the social pressures of the movements of Me Too and Believe Her, it really only made it all worse. And in this particular case, since no one bothered, thanks a lot, press, since no one bothered with even asking any of the details, that is, no one bothered to learn that there weren't any details, then it looks like people just wanted to fill in those knowledge gaps with whatever sordid, twisted image that they wanted to. They felt free to think and assume the worst, but the pressure to go drum up some victims, that caused Foreskin Johnson and his goons to go do some seriously sick stuff.